Carlos Nelson with the Kansas City Business Association, and this is a continuation of our series on people that are running for elected office here in Kansas City. Who do we have here?
I'm Dr.Marvia Jones.
Dr. Jones, could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, how long you've been in Kansas City? You got the big doctor behind your name. What's that about?
Right. Yeah, so originally I am from Jacksonville, Florida. I went to undergrad in Tallahassee, Florida. I met my husband down there. He's a Kansas City native, but he decided to come down south, and we met in Tallahassee. A couple years after we got married, we moved up here.
What was your degree in? Your
undergraduate was in chemical science.
Oh, yeah. All right. And go tell them a little bit about how your rise to getting that PhD.
Yeah, so I attended University of Kansas once we moved up here, and I pursued a joint degree program in public health and community psychology, behavioral psychology. So my PhD is in behavioral psychology.
All right. Tell our audience, why do you think you want them to vote for you for that position on the school board?
Yeah, so I have been invested since day one we moved here. We made a jointly conscious decision to invest in our neighborhood. We wanted specifically to move into the urban core. Even as some people say, people have choices about where you can move. But
Bernard Powell said, "Ghetto or gold mine, the choice is yours."
Exactly.
Right.
And even though I didn't necessarily grow up in that time period, whenever I read books, I hear about how you would have doctors and lawyers on the same block as the people.
As school teachers, as the trash man.
Absolutely.
Our neighborhoods were together.
Absolutely.
I moved here in '78, and I moved over in Sheridan Estates. That was like supposed to be your first or one of the first all-black neighborhoods. And we had all kinds of professionals, and we had working people. And that was that village that they talk about.
Absolutely.
And they would have Pekino parties, Monopoly parties, and different neighbors would come by. But we've lost that.
Absolutely. And I didn't want to be a part of the movement away from our urban neighborhoods. And so I'm happy to say that I've been an active member of my neighborhood association, Blue Hills Neighborhood Association. We're doing neighborhood cleanups, even unorganized cleanups.
Do you have kids?
I do.
Tell our audience a little bit about that. They need to know.
Two children, and this is really interesting. When we had started having children, is when the conversation really started. Okay, you guys got to leave now. It's time for you to leave now because the school district is supposedly having a lot of challenges, so you need to leave. But we have two children. They're 6. He's almost 7, and I have a 4-year-old as well, both boys. And we've been having a great experience in our children's school.
All right, tell me this: do you have a plan? Different candidates. Tell our audience. Tell us about your plan.
Yeah. So my plan, coming from the perspective of public health and psychology, I believe that we have a lot of challenges right now with our children who are coming into the school district, experiencing trauma, instability, different challenges that and then we expect them to just sit at a desk and perform. And right now we have not funded well enough, in my opinion, the supports that should wrap around those students. So I'm focusing on beefing up our support for opportunities to teach them healthy coping strategies. So we talk about the high eviction rate in this city, how thousands of families being evicted every year. Well, those children come to school. And so if you can imagine the trauma that you feel not knowing if you're going to come home and find your stuff out on the street.
I've dealt with kids like that. Yeah. Let's switch gears. Do you have an opinion on this kindergarten issue?
The PreK, Mayor's PreK tax plan.
Right.
So as someone with 2 young children, I wish that I could wholeheartedly support anything that would be aiming to provide universal PreK. PreK is extremely important. All the research says that the earlier you get education, the better your outcomes will be as you progress through your grades. However, as it stands, I cannot support the mayor's tax plan for PreK right now. There are many reasons to not support it. For me, it's about equity of causing the people who can least afford the cost to bear the burden. So they are most in need of pre-K, but can least afford it, and they're bearing a disproportionate
with that tax,
the cost
you saying?
of the tax. Yeah.
All right. Is there anything specifically that you think our audience should know about you?
Yeah, so one of the things that people have mentioned is that, for instance, opponents have said, well, they are very experienced, 30-something years, and I'm unconvinced that just having sunk in 30 years into something is all that it takes. So as someone who is on the younger side, but I have consulted at the national level with the Center for Disease Control, I am still a consultant.
All right, this is what I would say. Tell our audience a few of your accomplishments coming up the ladder.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Absolutely. So at the local level, someone who was active in the neighborhood, serving as a block contact and, working just for neighbors, then escalating to working for the state. One of the things that I've done for the state of Kansas and Missouri is to serve on a blue ribbon panel where we were looking at how to reduce infant mortality. So my work is not only local, it's at the state level as well as the national level. So right now, the Center for Disease Control, as you know, has been trying to work on opioid addiction. So not only have I served...
You mentioned that? I'm interrupting you on that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Because, again, we're on the Kansas City Business Association show. As most of our viewers know, I'm concerned about the African-American community. And when that opioid epidemic, as they're calling it now, has been existing in the African-American community for basically 2 decades, and they dealt with that in incarceration, as you being in the mental health field, do you have any... And now it's a mental health issue.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
Right. One of the things I've been focusing on, Mr. Nelson, is that with this new emphasis on epidemic, and it's now a health problem, it's a health concern, it's not a moral failing. With that, for the majority culture, what has come with that is changes in laws. And so one of the things, so for instance, I'll give you an example. For instance, it used to be that if your baby had drugs in their system when they were born, your baby would more or less be taken from you at birth. But with this new emphasis, now that the demographics have changed quite a bit, now we have laws that say no, if the mother has sort of said, hey, I need help, I shouldn't be sent to jail for this. So not only will she not go to jail, she will be supported to keep her baby with her.
Support system. So
my thing is, hey, it's a big problem that the black community in the past was not afforded this opportunity. But now that the law has changed, we need to be aware of those changes, and we need to leverage them as well. So whatever program these other people are using in order to capitalize on the new, softer way of dealing with drug addiction.
It's just like with the how they did with the crack versus the methamphetamines.
Exactly.
It was a whole different. They wanted to put you away. Now when they got in their community, it becomes a health issue, and there's all kinds of supportive services. Tell me this: do you think that from an educational point of view, and we talked off camera about our coach association and mental health for our kids, how do you see that in the district per se? Do you think that the mental health of our kids are being addressed adequately?
Right. So, and I thank you for the question. I'm always trying to be sensitive, because you never want to paint a whole community as they all have mental problems. That's never what I want to say, because that's stigmatizing in and of itself. However, we do know that when you've had systemic, historic oppression of a community, the community has continuously been shut out of opportunities such as economic development, jobs, access to quality.
I like that,
education.
economics.
Yeah, when you've been shut out, you do struggle under a different set of challenges than other people do. So the evictions and the violence that's happening in our neighborhoods, those things children bring with them into our schools. And we, as the grown-ups in the room, we need to put better support services around them.
All right. Switching gears, do you think that our community and the school district in general has used the tools and the digital networks that are available to transmit information that is sorely needed in our community and in our overall community? Do you think the leadership have really connected to the grassroots?
I think that, so when I think specifically about Dr. Bedell, I'm going to speak from that standpoint because my children are in the KCPS district.
Like that.
So I think that he has done a great job of reaching out to the community, showing up at small meetings. He was at my Blue Hills neighborhood meeting a few weeks ago. You know, we had the superintendent at our neighborhood meeting. That speaks a lot. Where I think that we could do better is by finding other forms of media to reach out to the community. So, you know, doing more frequent, they don't have to be long interviews or long talks, but finding ways of meeting people where
All right, I'm switching to economics.
Excuse me.
Do you feel that the Kansas City School Board is doing, and you might not even know this, the administration is doing enough on the economic side to do business with African American businesses? And I had this discussion with Melissa Robinson when she was on the show. I don't do business with them primarily, and this MBE status, what have you. I'm like, why do I have to fill out something to be MBE? The majority community don't have to say they the majority community. Why do these impediments exist for African American? That's what they are. They're impediments, and I want to know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I feel that equal access to business opportunities is going to be important for us. So whether the business is media or supplying or services, I think that we definitely need to make sure we have strong outreach to those businesses, make them feel welcomed and encouraged to pursue contracts or what have you in the district.
All right, that's in closing, do you have any final words, and how can our community contact you and donate to your campaign if they want to?
Okay, so the first, I can be reached at Marvia for KCPS on Facebook. Again, that's Marvia for KCPS. Remember, I am a write-in candidate for Sub-District 4. You can find more information about me there. I do respond to messages, so I would be happy to hear from you. I would say in closing, I would like for everyone to do our research. Do your research on who is running for the office. And Google is free. You can do your free background check just by Googling each of our names. And I just would encourage people to not go with the status quo and not believe that just because a name has been thrown around a long time that that's the best choice. I want us to be informed. I believe that that is what is going to help our communities, by each of us being independently informed about the people that we are bringing in to represent us.
I totally concur with every last word you said. To our public, you have got to know who you're voting for and what they stand for. Last question, how do you feel integrity plays and honesty plays in our elected officials?
Oh, that's huge for me. That's huge for me. When you cast your vote for someone, some people have gone canvassing and during you support a candidate. You are saying, I trust that you're going to represent me and you're going to keep my best interests at your forefront. And when someone violates that by being underhanded in any way or going with different motives, you are weakening our trust in democracy. And we, especially as a Black community, we have seen enough of that, and it has harmed us. And so I think that integrity is absolutely important. Integrity, ethics, and honesty.
Excellent. In closing, as always, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself.
Absolutely.
Good night.
This program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.